This episode, we are looking at school uniform. Yes, slightly controversial, contentious issue at the moment. If you've been looking at social media over the last few weeks, if you've been reading the papers, you will have seen lots of articles, mainly written from a parent's perspective, interestingly, about how schools are responding to children not arriving appropriately dressed in the appropriate school uniform, or allegedly not appropriately dressed in the school uniform, and how some schools have been dealing with that. And again, there's been lots of kind of behaviour blogs and behaviour experts weighing in on this issue and making comment. And the really interesting thing about this whole issue for me, first of all, is that it's been seen to be a very black and white issue. You're either on one side or the other. You're either on the side of the parents, where you say, actually, is school uniform that important? The communication between school and home hasn't been effective, and actually the parents are right and the school are completely wrong in being really, really strict, because we've got parents that can't afford uniform, and we've got children that are trying their best to abide by the school uniform policy but are really, really struggling. And then you've got the other people, you've got people on the other side of the coin who are very much like, no, the head teacher and the school are absolutely right to isolate children and to exclude children because they're not wearing the school uniform. The school rules are the school rules, tough, deal with it. These are the high expectations we have, and we need to sustain those, and we need to keep those. The thing is, actually, this isn't an issue about school uniform, okay? This kind of whole school uniform debacle is actually kind of, for me, clouding and kind of masking the real agenda, in my opinion, and the real issue, which is actually relationships between school and home, and communication between school and home, and the either the positive or negative relationship that parents have with their child's education. Let me explain. The fact is, right, school uniform is important, and in no way am I saying that schools are wrong to have a school uniform, to have a uniform policy. I do believe that's important. I believe it should be upheld. I believe it should be managed. But I think it's more important to manage that effectively with support of home. The fact that a head teacher allegedly sent 50 children home because they weren't wearing the right uniform, okay, yes, I believe he had to do something about it. Sending children home because they didn't have the right uniform, is that the right message we want to send? I'm going to go out on a limb and say no. Because the fact is, all we're doing is we're putting up barriers to learning, aren't we? We're putting up barriers between us as a school, as an education body, and the parents that we're trying to engage with. We're actually stunting the progress of some of the children, because if they're not in the class learning and making progress, then what are they doing? What's our job? Our job is to ensure children make progress. We want kids to be educated. We want them to be engaged. And yes, it's important for children to have a school uniform, but at the cost of their education, at the cost of that child making progress. In my experience, I've worked with young people that couldn't afford a school uniform. I've worked with young people that, for whatever reason, and for a whole host of reasons, uniform was a real issue. Now, we had a choice as a school. We could either send them home and keep them at home until uniform had been sorted. Now, I know for some of the young people that I worked with, uniform would have been sorted. So what would they have done? They'd have stayed at home and wouldn't have got an education. So actually, we bent the rules. So we had children that we wanted them to be smart, so we wouldn't allow them to wear things like jeans and tracksuits. But if they wore kind of a smart polo shirt, even if it wasn't the right colour, if they had made an effort to be smart, do you know what? We'd allow them into school, because actually their education was more important than them wearing the right t-shirt. Now, I'm not saying that we should start bending the rules for some children, because I know that is a grey area and we get into all sorts of problems. But I think the fundamental issue with this whole uniform situation is actually, how on earth is that head teacher going to get those parents on side when actually from the first day of term, he's wound them up and he's turned them off to education, he's turned them off to the school. There will be parents that will take kids out of that school based on that one decision. There will be parents that actually won't want to engage with that head teacher in the future based on that one decision. So while he's drawn a line in the sand and he's been very strict, and he's been very straight down the line, actually what has he done to build relationships with the parents of those kids? Nothing. All he's done is destroyed them. And he's going to have a really hard job at building those relationships up. And we know in order for kids to succeed, we need a good relationship between home and school. That's really, really key. The other thing I want to point out is, imagine those kids that have turned up to school for their very first day. So, day one at school, they arrive, they're excited, they're anxious, they're nervous, you know, they've got a uniform that's 2 sizes too big because it's their first day and mum and dad say they'll grow into it. And actually they arrive at school only to be told that their trousers are too tight or their trousers are too short or for whatever reason that the shoes they're wearing aren't right. It's not their fault. Day one, first day of a brand new start, guess what? They get sent home. What kind of message are we sending to those kids? Are they going to be engaged in school? Are they going to want to turn up to school? Probably not. And again, we haven't even discussed the parents that actually can't afford uniform. The parents that have done their absolute best to get their child looking as smart as possible, only to be told by a member of their child's secondary school that actually good effort, but not quite good enough. Therefore, send your child home. I don't think that's the right message to be sending. So even though it's really, really hard and really, really tricky, okay, actually maybe we should spend a little bit more time in making an effort. Why don't we send letters home to those parents? Why don't we make a phone call home to the people that aren't in the right uniform? Give them at least 1 day's grace. Surely that's the right thing to do. And then actually we might be building positive relationships up with staff and teachers and parents. So actually in the future, when we need those parents to get on side and actually support us in the education of their child, they're not going to be turned off to school because of something that happened in year 7 on their child's first day of school. I think that's more important personally. Another issue, I have to say, if we're going to ask children to wear appropriate clothing, I also think it needs to start with teachers. Now, I'll hold my hand up and say when I worked in education, I occasionally got told off for what I wore because I tried to bend the rules and be a bit more relaxed than I needed to be. So I'm as guilty as anyone, but the reality is, actually as teachers, do teachers exemplify appropriate clothing in school? Does every member of staff have a clean, ironed shirt every day with no creases in? Because that's modelling good uniform. Does all the gents' suits, are they creased or are they ironed and looking good and dry cleaned on a regular basis? Does every male member of staff have their tie done up to the top, or actually is it loose because it's a little bit warm? Okay, it's really, really easy to point out the uniform issues we have with the children in school, but surely if we're going to model that, actually we need to also look at what staff are wearing and how staff are presenting themselves, because if staff can't do it, why should we expect kids to? Anyway, that's enough for me. That's my rant over, official. I will see you soon with another hot topic in the world of behaviour. Don't forget, you can email inquiries@behavetolearn.co.uk if you've got any questions, want to make a comment, or want to choose a topic for the next video. Or you can tweet at behavetolearn. Cheers, guys.